with the firing of Pam Bondi as the Attorney General and with the apparent second passing over of Todd Blanche as the Attorney General, because he's not going to get that job either, all touch the Epstein files in a certain way. And now we are back with a federal judge potentially having the ability, the right, the jurisdiction to decide whether the release of the Epstein files, those 3 million pages that none of us in the democracy ever believed were the complete and full files. Now it's going to be up to Judge Gardaphe, a judge in the Southern District of New York, to decide in a little followed case called Radar Online, based on new direction and a mandate by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals for Judge Gardaphe to decide whether the release of the 3 million files was sufficient. Because Radar Online asked for everything related to the Epstein files by way of a Freedom of Information Act request years ago. The government then, the Department of Justice, then led by Pam Bondi, now out after being led kicking and screaming apparently out of the White House based on reporting, begging for a job. But we're back. And so the reality is that the comparison of the Epstein files, which the government took the position satisfies FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act request, and whether it does or doesn't is up to Judge Gardaphe. Now, he might have to appoint a special master because there's a lot of pages and a lot of pieces of paper to decide whether it's complete or not. But the Second Circuit, let me read to you from the Second Circuit ruling with Judge Chin, Judge Menashe, and Judge Lohier. I've been before Chin and Lohier before in court. They ruled the following. The defendants, appellees, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, moves for remand upon due consideration, and it's hereby ordered that the June 26, 2024 order, almost 2 years ago, of the district court is vacated. The motion for remand is granted, and the case is remanded for the district court to consider whether plaintiffs' claims for relief have been rendered moot by the government's release of documents pursuant to the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and the impacts, if any, of that statute and other intervening events on the claims. Now, let me just update you on Judge Gardaphe. Good judge. Has always been one of the slower judges in making his decisions on the Southern District of New York, but I think he's going to have to appoint a special master here. Let me do a quick tutorial of what's going to happen in the aftermath of the Epstein affair now that Pam Bondi's been fired. She was going to appear on April 14th, before an oversight committee hearing. James Comer has been trying to pull back that subpoena under pressure from the White House. We know that the White House did not want Pam Bondi to go under oath about the Epstein files and her handling of them. And so before they could get to that point, she's been fired. Another version of an Epstein cover-up. Similarly, Alina Habba, like Donald Trump's personal lawyer, she was ordered to appear before a New Jersey federal judge to answer for whether she was continuing to run the New Jersey U.S. Attorney's Office after being fired. And rather than appear for her testimony, they gave in and appointed a new U.S. attorney in New Jersey. See, Donald Trump doesn't want the lawyers in his life to get onto stands and give sworn testimony, especially Pam Bondi. But this doesn't end the story. The subpoena, in my view, is still valid and not extinguished because Pam Bondi has been removed from office. In fact, former U.S. attorneys and former attorney generals like Bill Barr for Donald Trump have recently testified before the committee. And just because they're no longer in the office doesn't stop it. Jack Smith, special counsel, testified. Former presidents have testified, like Bill Clinton. Former attorneys general, like Bill Barr, have testified. Why not Pam Bondi? I'm going to have Representative Summer Lee from Pennsylvania with me for an interview. She's on that committee. I'm going to ask her exactly that. We need to keep up the pressure that Pam Bondi still come before that committee and give sworn testimony. Look, magnesium, it's something most of us lack. And if you're taking that drugstore variant, you're still not getting the full picture. Industrial farming, chronic stress, and everyday aging all make it worse. Most supplements only use one form of magnesium, but magnesium comes in many forms that support your body in different ways. That's why you need to try Qualia Magnesium Plus. It combines 10 bioavailable forms of magnesium with more than 70 trace minerals for comprehensive full-spectrum support. Sleep deeper, think sharper, recover faster, support muscle strength, a steadier mood, and balanced energy metabolism. It's not just a sleep supplement. Oh no, it's a full body magnesium system built for modern living so you can feel your best every day. Since adding Qualia Magnesium Plus to my routine, I'm feeling easier recovery from workouts and a calm, more centered wind down at night. It's been a supportive addition to my daily wellness routine. Experience the most trusted magnesium for purity, potency, and performance. Plus, it's non-GMO, vegan, and gluten-free, making it a choice you can feel good about. Go to qualialife.com/legalaf for 50% off. And here's a bonus. Use the code LegalAF for an additional 15% off your order. That's QUALIA life.com/legalaf and then use code LegalAF. Thanks to Qualia for sponsoring this episode. She's been not only fired, she's been kicked out of the government. At least Kristi Noem was given some made-up, make-believe Marvel Studios job running S.H.I.E.L.D. or something, whatever that's supposed to be. Pam Bondi, she's been given, according to Donald Trump, a fake job out of the public sector in the private sector that he can't name now, but will be announced in the future. That sounds like no job at all. And Pam Bondi now being out of the government the way Lindsay Halligan was, the disgraced U.S. attorney Donald Trump appointed for 30 days to go after his political enemies. She can now be investigated by the Florida bar. Yes. The Florida bar that said that Pam Bondi can't be investigated for bar violations, for ethics violations while she's still in the federal government. She's no longer in the federal government anymore. So if Pam Bondi thought she was going to run away from the Epstein scandal, and that she created, she's wrong. And the Democrats are not going to let her run away from it. And if she gets away with it now, when the Democrats get the gavel in the House and the Senate in the future, and Jamie Raskin is the chair of the Judiciary Committee, aren't those sweet words to hear out loud? He can subpoena her to come in. But they're trying to hide, and Pam Bondi knows it. One of the reasons that we speculated, and I asked Ben, my podcast partner, Ben Mysalis, this on a podcast recently, why didn't you think Pam Bondi was the first to go or in the first batch along with Kristi Noem? Turned out she was. He said, well, I think it's because she knows where all the bodies are buried in the Epstein files. I agree. But at a certain point, her incompetence just reaches a certain level that even Donald Trump can't ignore it. Her coffin was so long, there's not just one nail that nailed her coffin shut. It could have been in any number of things. The appearance where she tried to cut off having to testify about the Epstein files and went down to Congress and met her match with Democrats who said, great, I'm glad you're here, but you're still testifying on the 14th, right? And that backfired. Her testimony before the House and the Senate, in which she waged war against senators and congresspeople, not covering herself with any glory. That backfired on her. The mishandling of the Epstein scandal from the very beginning and the files. The client list is on my desk. Client list is not on my desk. There's binders of material. I'm handing it out to podcasters on the right wing. No, those aren't the full files. Donald Trump's name is in it. No, Donald Trump's name is not in it. No, Donald Trump's name is in it, but he's not guilty of anything. I mean, this is just graded on Donald Trump. And since Donald Trump can't admit that he's done anything wrong, and he sees the polling numbers down in the 30s, that's crowds again, right? Crowds against Donald Trump. He's got to blame somebody. So Stephen Miller being blamed for failure of immigration policy, rightly so. And soon to be thrown under the bus, I would believe. Kash Patel, FBI director. He's not long for this world either. He has very little Republican support. Pam Bondi, same thing. She never had the support of the Republicans. Nancy Mace is out celebrating and dancing on her grave already. The way she handled the Epstein affair was atrocious, says Nancy Grace, future governor of South Carolina, and the rest. So that's no surprise. These people are going to be fired because Donald Trump has to throw them under the bus. because he can't admit to himself or to his wife, his close advisor, Melania, or Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, that he's at fault. The fault doesn't lie in our stars, but in ourselves. He will never admit that. And so I'm glad this little known case, this Radar Online case, like the National Enquirer case, is still alive and putting a federal judge in a position of power to review the Epstein files. We had two judges, Judge Berman and Judge Engelmeyer, who we thought was going to get involved with supervising the production, and said, no, we're just the judges over the Maxwell prosecution and the Epstein prosecution. We can't go that far and use our inherent authority to supervise this process. Now Judge Gardaphe can. Will continue to put pressure on the federal judiciary to do their job when it comes to the victims of the Epstein files and of the Epstein child sex trafficking ring, and concerning the files here on MeidasTouch and on Legal AF. Take a minute, come over to Legal AF YouTube channel and help us continue to grow that pro-democracy channel as well. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.